Tell me, Lucy, why your French-educated children were shocked when you asked them, are there any Muslims in your class?
They were shocked because it's rude to refer to somebody's ethnicity in France. It's rude to mention the fact that they belong to an ethnic minority, because the myth of equality is so important and so ingrained. You don't refer to what separates you from the main body. And when I pointed out to them that, it's only if you see being Muslim as a stigma that it becomes offensive to mention it, they said, no, it's not that. It's just that a French Muslim wants to be French first. And therefore, if you refer to their religion, then you're shutting them out from the Republican dream.
And that's an ideal which is really unquestionable, isn't it? That one must integrate, one must be French, one must speak perfect French. That must come first. One must espouse all those Republican values.
Yes, and there's a consensus right across, left and right in France, that the British model, which allows immigrant communities to sort of integrate at their own pace and continue to speak their own language at school, to continue to practice their customs, that is seen as an anti-model. It's seen as a flawed and not desirable at all. I met Rachida Dati, who you might remember is one of Sarkozy's former ministers, and she's of Moroccan origin. And, I asked her about the whole question of positive discrimination. And she basically said, the British have not understood that, what we need is, the French model is all about a community of ideas, values, and language. We need to all move forward with the same dream and the same idea.
But that's very difficult in a society, as you describe it, which is very hierarchized, very conservative, where, it's not easy to break into, to get a place at one of the grandes écoles or something like that. It's, that illusion of transparency and easy mobility is indeed an illusion, isn't it?
There's a huge gap between the idea and the reality that becomes more and more of a strain every day. When we see explosions in the suburbs every sort of 5 or 10 years in France, it's that tension that's at the root of it. And the French won't call them race riots, but that's what they are, clearly. And at some point, France will have to face that problem.
The Anglo-Saxon model, as it's called, is very much, a pejorative term in France, and America is the great bogeyman in many ways, and, espouses values of consumerism and materialism, which the French reject. And yet, you see signs of change. You see, with Sarkozy's presidency, you identify a shift very much in that direction towards that materialistic, go-getting, work ethic, celebrity type of culture that France has thus far resisted.
Yeah, there are signs of change. It's interesting because Sarkozy, having sort of got in on that ticket on a sort of rather Anglo-Saxon program where, he put the business of hard work and making money at the center of his campaign, and people went for it. Having done that, he's now, particularly in the face of the recession, sort of slightly distanced himself from that, and is basically sort of embracing his sort of Jacobin political origins. He's the belief in the strong state, massive public spending and projects, and, the state as a sort of motor for recovery. And so I think that this sort of mutation towards a sort of more Anglo-Saxon approach is sort of inevitable. But at the same time, because of what's happened recently, there's been a kind of shift against it. I just feel, you just have a sense that you kind of wonder how long France will hold out, will hold back from sort of fully blown consumerism, for example, which she does.
You say at the end of the book that you have gone through a love-hate relationship with the country, and you still, to this day, love it and despise it in equal measure. But you have chosen to settle there. You don't envisage coming back to the UK. So, when all is said and done and the balance is sort of weighed up, you see yourself as belonging in France in some way.
I do. I mean, I don't know how much of that is linked to the fact that my children are there. I mean, I'm sure, I have grown-up children of 23 and 21. Their hearts are there, so I can't really separate my love of the place from that. But I think having been in Britain for a month, which I haven't done for a long time, I feel a kind of constraint that I don't feel in France, and I think that may have something to do with simply the experience of being in a foreign culture, which, once you've got over the shock of it, becomes second nature, and it becomes a source of pleasure to be on the outside, to be slightly removed. And I would find it very difficult to let that go, that feeling.